ॐ विश्वन्दर्पण दृश्यमान नगरी तुल्यन्निजान्तर्गतं पश्यन्नात्मनि मायया बहिर्वोद्भूतं यथा निद्रया यः साक्षात् कुरुते प्रबोधसमये स्वात्मानमेवाद्वयम् तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नम इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये नारायणं पद्मभुवं वसिष्ठं शक्तिं च तत्पुत्रपराशरं च व्यासं शुकं गौडपदं महान्तं गोविन्दयोगीन्द्रमथास्य शिष्यं श्रीशङ्कराचार्यमथास्य पद्मा पादं च हस्तामलकं च शिष्यं तन्तोटकं वातिककारमन्यान् अस्मद्गुरून् सन्ततमानतोऽस्मि श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः परब्रह्मनिष्ठं स्वतो धर्मनिष्ठम् अहिंसैकनिष्ठं स्वशिष्यै सुजुष्टं यतीनां वरिष्ठं गुरूणां गरिष्ठं दयानन्दरूपं मदाचार्यमीडे नमः श्रीपरमार्थाय संसाराध्यासनाशिने श्रोत्रियब्रह्मनिष्ठाय तस्मै ब्रह्मविदे नमः सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम् ॐ I welcome you all to the 34th class of the Fundamentals of Vedanta series. So far we had seen the roadmap for moksha. And on the road to moksha, adhikaritvam is an important milestone. Basically, how one gets qualified. And we saw that through karma yoga and upasana yoga, one comes to the adhikaritvam milestone, where one gains the sadhana chatushtaya sampattihi, the qualifications for the study of Vedanta. And coming to this point, he said one has to commence on something different than what one was doing earlier, which is entering Jnana Yoga. And for this, one needs a guru. And so we saw who the guru is and why the guru is important. And once the Shishya and the guru come together, then one enters Jnana Yoga. And the first thing that the guru does is convert the mumukshuhu into a jigyasuhu, the seeker of moksha into a seeker of knowledge. Why? Because moksha is eka sadhana sadhyam, and the sadhanam is only jnana. Moksha can be attained purely through knowledge. And why is that? Because the cause of samsara is ajnana. Then the next conversion the guru has to do is convert the jigyasuhu into a shushrushuhu, a seeker of shravana. And how does that happen? By clear understanding that jnanam requires a means of knowledge. Knowledge requires a means of knowledge. Jnanam requires a pramanam. Jnanam is also eka sadhana sadhyam, and the sadhanam for jnanam is a pramanam. And that pramana is Vedanta. Through the words of Vedanta, through deliberation, contemplation on the words of Vedanta, one gets to know something that I cannot know through any of the other means of knowledge. Therefore, the Shishya becomes desirous of Shravanam and thereby commences Jnana Yoga, which consists of three steps: Shravanam, Mananam, and Nididhyasanam. Shravanam is consistent and systematic study of the texts of Vedanta for a length of time under a competent Acharya. And when this study is done, then there arise doubts. And why are there doubts? Because there is ajnanam. And when there is ajnanam, there is always adhyasa, superimposition. I always make a mistake about something that I don't know. When I don't know the reality of something, I invariably make a mistake. And therefore, I have made mistakes in three major areas. One is who I am. Second is what is the nature of Ishvara. And third is what is the nature of this world. So these mistaken conclusions I have been carrying in my mind. And when Vedanta says something different, then these conclusions, since I entertained them for a long time, they manifest as doubts. And therefore, clarification of these doubts is required. This is called mananam. And after this, there is the third part, which is nididhyasanam, which is basically the ignorance is gone at this point. After Shravanam and Mananam, the ignorance is gone. Moksha is no longer a goal. Moksha is seen as my own nature. In order to derive the emotional benefits of the knowledge, one has to overcome habitual thinking patterns. So there are certain habits, certain habitual thinking patterns that are there not out of ignorance, but purely out of habit. And therefore, one has to immerse oneself in the teaching so that the habitual thinking patterns are overcome, much like this beggar who has discovered that he is now an inheritor of a large sum of money. He has to overcome his habit of extending the begging bowl. This is Shravanam, Mananam, and Nididhyasanam. Then in the last class, we discussed an important topic, the law of karma, because some of these ideas appear in the Vedantic teachings. Therefore, it is important to be clear on what this law of karma is. And as we said, that before the world came into existence, Ishvara was there. Ishvara who transcends space and time. Ishvara was there. And the nature of Ishvara is consciousness. So this conscious being was there. And the world emerged out of this conscious being, exactly like the dream world emerges out of a waker who has gone to sleep because of the pressure of certain mental impressions. Similarly, we said that due to the collective karmas of all the jivatmas, which are fructifying, this world emerges out of Ishvara. And as we said, Ishvara becomes this world because transcending space and time, there is nowhere else for Ishvara to go to get the material. Ishvara is not just the intelligent cause, but also the material cause. Therefore, Ishvara pervades this entire world, the intelligence that pervades this entire universe. Just as we said that my body is a body of a conscious being, similarly, the entire universe can be looked upon as a body of a conscious being who is Ishvara. And just as my body has built-in defenses to sustain health, so it is health that sustains the body, and therefore the body tries to sustain the health for its own preservation. And whenever there is a threat to the health of the body retaliates in the form of if something enters the nose, there is sneezing, or else there is the immune system. So there is nobody willing all this. All of this has been programmed into the design of the body. Similarly, we said that even in this body of a conscious being that is Ishvara, that is this body of the conscious being who is Ishvara is this universe. And in the design of this universe, there are mechanisms for the sustenance of this universe. And the equivalent of health is the order and the harmony that sustains the universe that we call as dharma. Therefore, we said when dharma declines, then the universe also retaliates. And the universe has built-in mechanisms for incentivizing dharma, you can say. That when somebody does an act of dharma, then there is a certain punya that accrues to this person. If somebody violates dharma, then there is a certain papa that accrues to this person. The punya and papa are adrishtam, unseen. But what is their effect? They later on produce drishta sukham. Punyam produces drishta sukham. Papam produces drishta dukkham. Avashyam anubhoktavyam kritam karma shubhashubham. Whatever punya and papa seeds have been planted by this jiva through good acts and right acts and wrong acts, those have to fructify. This is the law. And as we said, each jiva carries a bundle of karmas that this jiva has gathered in past janmas. And this entire bundle is called Sanchita Karma. Sanchita Karma. And out of this bundle, a small part is ready for fructification, just as seeds are ready for sprouting. And this small part that is ready for fructification is called Prarabdha Karma. And this is what is responsible for the type of embodiment the jiva gets and for the pleasures and pains that the jiva experiences in a particular life. And as the jiva leads the life, the prarabdha gets exhausted, but at the same time, the jiva accumulates new papa and punya, and this is known as agami karma. So constantly, prarabdha is getting exhausted, but agami is getting accumulated. And therefore, the sanchita bundle is in no danger of getting exhausted. And when the prarabdha is totally exhausted, the prarabdha that led to this life, when the prarabdha is totally exhausted, the body falls. That is when the separation of the sukshma jivatma happens from this gross body. And that is an event that is called death. And subsequent to death, the next embodiment of this jiva is determined by the next set of prarabdha karmas that are fructifying from this sanchita. And therefore, as we saw, in this flowing river, there are vortices. And as an insect is carried from one vortex to another vortex, jiva is helplessly carried by these karmas from one vortex to another, from one janma to another. So then we were talking about the spiritual seeker. And in case of a spiritual seeker, one who has set the sights on moksha, we said Krishna gives an assurance that for such a seeker, the next janma will be a conducive janma where the seeker can continue to pursue the moksha pursuit from where he left off. Tatra tam buddhi samyogam labhate aurvadehikam. And therefore, there are certain advantages to the law of karma. There are philosophical advantages as well as practical advantages. The philosophical advantages are that in the absence of the law of karma, Ishvara would become very unjust. If Ishvara is doling out sukha and dukkha without any basis, then Ishvara would become unjust, cruel, and partial. And people will not have faith in such an Ishvara. let alone follow the teachings of such an Ishvara. Then the second point is that in the absence of the law of karma, we'll find it very hard to explain the differences in births of different jivas. Because certain jivas are born in difficult circumstances, whereas others are born in better circumstances. And the third point is that Vedanta explains the origination of this world based on karma. And if the law of karma is not there, then why would this world originate? He said everything has to have a cause. And therefore, we would find it much harder to explain why the world originates from Ishvara. And then there are certain practical advantages to assimilating this law of karma. The first is that if one feels that one has led a good life, but one is still getting suffering, then one can explain to oneself why this is happening. One will find it easier to accept the suffering and go through the suffering. And see that suffering itself as a means of exhausting the papa, which becomes a means of purifying oneself. And the second point is that in the absence of the law of karma, there would be a degeneration of morality in the society. Because if there is no karma and there is no rebirth, etc., if this is the idea that one abides by, then any means is okay to gain artha and kama. One doesn't need to abide by dharma. And therefore, one will use whatever means to accomplish their ends. As long as one can hoodwink the local law enforcement officials, then that is enough. Whereas when one understands that there is this law of karma, then that is like an invisible pair of eyes looking at everything that one is doing. And when one is conscious of this fact, then even when nobody is looking, at that point also one will make sure that one is not violating dharma. Then the next point is that when I see that my present situation is due to my past, how I used my past free will, that is what is determining my present situation. And therefore, I will also understand that if I have to have conducive situations in the future, I should use my present free will properly. And therefore, karma doesn't really make one fatalistic or anything. In fact, it puts one in charge of creating one's own destiny. It puts one in the driver's seat for creating one's own destiny. And therefore, we said that we have to also intelligently use our free will. And what is an intelligent use of the free will? One comes to karma yoga, comes to upasana yoga, gains the chitta shuddhi, comes to a guru, does shravanam, mananam, nididhyasanam, gains the jnanam, and then becomes free of this grip of karma. Only through jnanam one can become free of this grip of karma. So far, we summarized what we have discussed, and now we are entering today's topic. So, we are starting our journey into Shravanam, so to say. And this journey is a journey of understanding. So, in Shravanam, it is more and more about understanding what is, clearly seeing what is really. Because my moksha is already accomplished. I don't have to accomplish anything new. I have to clearly see that my moksha is already accomplished. And I have a lot of misunderstanding about it. That is why I think it is not accomplished. We go back to the Agyan. So the entire journey is now about understanding what Vedanta is saying. Vedanta will talk about a lot of things, but today's topic is extremely, extremely important. And this is about what really exists. What is reality? So, in order to understand this, let's picturize this situation where there is a jewel box and there is a person, there are two people, one of them tells the other, go and get the Surya Kanta jewel from the jewel box. So, if this person has to pick the Surya Kanta jewel from this collection of jewels in the jewel box, he should know what is the criteria for picking this particular jewel. Otherwise, how is he going to pick the jewel? So, similarly, what is the reality here in this world? If we were to ask the question, we should first have some criteria for what, how to identify this reality. Only then one can say this is the reality. One has to be first clear about what is reality before one can say this is reality. Because there can be imposters. Just as there could be another jewel that looks very similar to the Suryakanta jewel, one has to then distinguish which is the real Suryakanta. So this one has to be clear about first. What is the criteria for reality? But before we go to the criteria for reality, what is really existent? We'll first talk about the opposite of it. What is not existent? What is non-existent? So here we'll look at that first shloka that I had sent on the group today, which is an extract from Adi Shankaracharya's Taittiriya Upanishad Bhashya, where Adi Shankaracharya Bhagavad quotes this particular shloka in some context. So I'll read that shloka first, and then we can look into the meaning. Mruga Trishnam Bhasi Snataha Khapushpa Krita Shekharaha Esha Vandhyasuto Yati Shasha Shringa Dhanurdharaha. So this is actually a humorous shloka that describes non-existent things. So the first word here, first part of this says, first we'll say Eshaha Yati. This person goes. The shloka says this person goes. Eshaha Yati. Who goes? Mruga Trishnam Bhasi Snataha. So this is saying this person just has taken bath in mirage water. So he's just taken a bath in mirage water. Mruga Trishnam Bhasi Snataha. Kha Pushpa Krita Shekharaha. Then what did he do? He has adorned his hair with flowers plucked from the sky. Kha Pushpa, flowers plucked from the sky. And who is this person? Esha Vandhya Suto Yati. Who is this person who is going? He's a Vandhya Suta, meaning he's the son of a barren woman. Meaning a woman who cannot give birth to a child is the son of such a woman. And what is he holding in his hand? Shasha Shringa, Shasha Shringa Dhanurdharaha. So he's holding a bow made of rabbit's horns. Rabbit's horns. What this is talking about, impossible things, non-existent things, like bath in a mirage water, sky flowers. the son of a barren woman. And lastly, this rabbit's horns. A rabbit doesn't have any horns. So why are we talking about this? This is really non-existence. These types of things are non-existent. They can never be experienced. So a non-existent thing can never be experienced. So now let us come back to trying to create a straw man proposal for what can be a criteria for reality. We said there should be a criteria for reality before we can say this is the reality. So if let us assume that I'm having this conversation with somebody who's a materialist or a pragmatist, or somebody who is a rationalist, for example. So we just talked about what is non-existent. And Vedanta gives it a special name. These non-existent things are called asat or tucham. Asat or tucham. But let us imagine I'm having this conversation with this materialist or pragmatist. And so I ask him, what is your criteria of reality? And his views are generally reflecting the views of the majority of the people on the planet. So he would say something like, okay, so I understand there are all these non existent things. These non existent things can never be experienced. So I will start off with saying that whatever I am experiencing, that cannot be non existent. And therefore, whatever I'm experiencing is existent. Whatever I'm experiencing is the reality. This is what the majority of the people think. So I see, for example, I see this pen. So this pen is real. And I see this phone here. This phone is real. So why are you even asking this question? It seems so obvious. Do we have much to discuss here? So Vedanta says that I agree with you that these non-existent things, they cannot be experienced. We are on the same page there. But when you say that whatever I'm experiencing is existent or real, then I will differ from you on that. That just shows that you have not analyzed your life's experiences very carefully. You're just making a very quick statement. So you are saying that experienceability is the criteria for reality. This is how we are starting. Experienceability is the criteria for reality, is what you're saying, Vedanta says. But Vedanta says that this is not the correct criteria for reality. So he asks why. Vedanta says, have you ever experienced a snake on a rope? Even if you have not experienced this, you can relate to the example that you're walking in semi-darkness. And you've heard all these stories about the snake being there the past day in the village. You are walking, and you see something and looks like a snake. So you start to scream, snake, snake. And then a huge crowd assembles. And finally, if somebody throws light on it, they find what is really there is a rope. So, if experienceability was the criteria for reality, you experience the snake. And therefore, even when you closely examined it, the snake should not have disappeared. But the snake did disappear. You said the snake existed. And then you take back your words and then you say what really exists is the rope. So experienceability alone cannot be the criteria for reality, because an unreal snake can also be experienced. So this person says, okay, I should have realized that I'm talking to a Vedantin because you will bring this rope and snake example. See, I should have thought of this. So he says, okay, I understand what you're saying, but it's easy to fix this. I will just add another word to my definition to eliminate such rope snake type of scenarios. Because with this imaginary snake, I cannot really transact. For example, I cannot interact with the snake. I cannot, draw poison from it, for example, or give it to a snake charmer. So I will add one more condition to my criteria, and then I think we are done. It says experienceability and transactability are the criteria for reality. If I am experiencing something and then I am transacting with it, then that is real. What more do you want? He says. Vedanta says that hold on, you're still missing an important experience in life. Take your dream, and in the dream, you're experiencing various objects, you're also transacting with them. For example, the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad gives this example that you may see chariots in the dream. You see a chariot, you see the wheel, you see the road. You have a driver, a charioteer. You tell him, go faster. And as he goes faster, the wheels turn faster. You feel the bumps on the road. You tell the driver, go right, he turns right. Go left, he turns left. So you're transacting with the driver. You are sitting on the chariot, you're transacting with the chariot. You are even feeling the bumps on the road. But then what happens? You wake up and you say, whatever existed. In the dream, you said the chariot exists, the road exists, the charioteer exists. And after waking up, you say, none of those exist. So you ate your own words there. And therefore, experienceability and transactability also cannot be the criteria for reality. So this person thinks for a while and says, I see what you're saying. But then these dream objects are not really useful. In my once I woken up, of what use is that chariot to me? Of what use is that charioteer to me? And if I get a lottery in my dream, then I cannot buy anything with it. Here I have some money. It's real money. I can buy a real house with it. But whatever you're talking about in the dream, that is useless. And therefore, I will add another criteria to my definition. That experienceability, transactability, and utility are the criteria for reality. And he says, now I think we're done with this discussion. Nothing to discuss. Vedanta says, hold on. Let us say your chariot is moving further in the dream. You're telling this charioteer to go faster and faster. Finally, there's a big bump on the road, and because of that, you get thrown off this chariot. You get hurt in the process, and then you're asking for water. Asking for water. And you have a lot of people have this habit of having some water next to the bed, the bed when they go to sleep. This real water by the bedside is of no use to you. You are screaming, water, water. Luckily, there's a passerby who comes there, and he is a compassionate person. He gets water from somewhere and gives it to you. Now, what is that water that quenches your thirst? It is the dream water that quenches your thirst in the dream. So, the real water is of no use to you in the dream. In the dream, what quenches your thirst is the dream water. So don't say that dream objects don't have utility. For the dreamer, the dream is not a dream in dream. Swamiji says this is his one of his favorite statements. And he keeps hammering this, saying that for a dreamer, the dream is not a dream in dream. For him, this is the waking state. So, if we use experienceability, transactability, and utility as the criteria for reality, then if you give the dreamer this criteria, then what will the dreamer say? This dream, whatever I'm experiencing, yes. Am I transacting with it? Yes. And is this useful to me? Yes. So, whatever criteria you're giving is not going to help the dreamer come out of the dream by saying this is false. In fact, it is going to reinforce the dreamer's idea that whatever I'm seeing is real. So, the materialist then says that there is still one difference. See, that all of these things that you're talking about, like the rope snake or the dream, etc., they are all they are all inside my mind. They're all inside my mind. But this world is outside. This is not inside my mind. I agree. I'm willing to say whatever I'm inside, whatever is inside my mind is not real. Whatever is outside. Let us add this additional criteria that experienceability, transactability, utility, and it has to be outside. Vedanta says that even when you project a snake on a rope, where is the snake that you're seeing? You point to the snake and you see there is a snake. Hit it, hit it. Or you say, there is a snake, I'll run away from it. You're running away from that point. Why? Because you're seeing it outside. So the addition of outside doesn't help. Even in the dream world, the dreamer is really seeing the world outside because this dream individual has got a dream body in the dream, and then he's seeing the world outside of himself. He's not seeing the world in his mind. In fact, the dreamer can talk about certain thoughts that I have. In the dream, the dreamer can say, I was just thinking of this. That was inside his mind, but then he's talking to a person outside. It is only after you wake up from the dream that you're saying that the dream world was inside my mind. In the dream, for the person who is dreaming, the dream world is very much outside. So let us take a step back. Whatever criteria this person is trying, that criteria gets defeated for this dream individual in the dream. Why is this important? See, that the dream individual in the dream is ignorant of three things. He is ignorant of this, this dream Ishvaraha. The Ishvaraha who created the dream world, he is ignorant of that Ishvaraha. Who is this Ishvaraha who created the dream world? It is the waker who is sleeping comfortably on the bed. This dream individual doesn't know about the waker who's sleeping on the bed. That he is the creator of this entire dream. And the next point this dream individual is ignorant of is that I am really that waker. And there is an identity between me and the waker. Why? Because after waking up, he says, I dreamt. There is an identity between this dream Jiva and the dream Ishvara. And the third point is that this world that this dream individual is seeing is not the reality. It has emerged from this waker who is asleep. He is ignorant of this fact also. And in the dream world, so in that, he's saying this has experienceability, transactability, utility, and it is outside. And now let us imagine that a dream guru comes in the dream world and tells him that there is this Ishvara who has projected this world. This world is unreal. What you're seeing is not the reality. And he will argue this has experienceability, transactability, utility is outside of me. How can you say it is unreal? So similarly, Vedanta points out that here too, this jiva is ignorant of the Ishvara, the super waker who has projected this world. First ignorance, ignorance of Ishvara, ignorance of the nature of Ishvara. The second is that you, the Jivatma, are in fact one with that Paramatma, that Ishvara. Second ignorance. A third ignorance is that one is taking this world to be the reality. Where what is really there is that super waker. And because this world has experienceability, transactability, utility, it appears to be outside, you're saying it is real. So should you not learn from the dream experience is the question that Vedanta is asking. Vedanta's intention here is to create a wedge in this person's thinking. If you want to cut a tree, first you have to create a wedge. You have to create a crack somewhere in order to demolish that idea completely. It has to start with a crack. So this develops the crack in the thinking of this person, that it is not airtight, that there are flaws that are possible. So then this person asks that if experienceability, transactability, utility is not the criteria for reality, then what should be the criteria for reality according to Vedanta? So this is where the Vedanta defines Sat, that which is really existent. And that is the second definition that I have given in the PDF. Trikala badhyam yat tat sat. Trikala abadhyam yat tat sat. That whose existence can never be dismissed or negated in the three periods of time, past, present, and future. That whose experience can never be negated. What does the negation or dismissing the existence mean? I will never have to take back those words. If I have said it is existent, it stays existent. I said that the snake was there. I had to eat my words when I saw the rope. I said this dream world is real. I had to eat my words when I woke up. I had to dismiss the existence of whatever I had seen earlier. Whereas, according to Vedanta's definition, which is Trikala Abadhyam Yat Tat Sat. If one looks at it this way, that whose existence can never be dismissed, it can never be dismissed. So there is such a thing, Vedanta says. Okay. So far, we have seen the three categories of, of reality. One is asat. Mrigatrishnam bhasi snataha is taking bath in a mirage water, a rabbit's horns. These things are absolutely non-existent. They can never be experienced. And this is called asat or tucham. And then we saw this projection of a snake on a rope. Swakale Satyavat Bhati, that's what it's called. In its time, it appears to be existent. Swakale Satyavat Bhati, it appears to be existent in a particular period of time when there is ignorance. When there is ignorance, it appears to be existent. So I see, therefore it is. I see it out of ignorance and I say it is. So such a thing is called pratibhasika satyam. Pratibhasika satyam means it appears like satyam in a state of ignorance. It appears like the reality. So we saw asat, absolutely non-existent, and this pratibhasika satyam, something that appears to be real in a state of ignorance. The snake appears to be real in a state of rope ignorance. And then the third category that we just saw is absolutely existent, which is sat, trikala avadhyam yat tat sat. That whose existence can never be dismissed in the past, present, or future. So now, the materialist or pragmatist, he says, I see what you're saying. Okay. But this world that I'm seeing in front of me, it has got this continuity. It has a certain permanence. I go to sleep, I wake up, and I still see that it is there. It is very much existent. So, in my view, you have not negated its existence. I yesterday before I slept, I said this exists. Today, after I am waking up, also I am saying it is existing. You have not really negated its existence in any way. For me, this is existent. So Vedanta says that again, if you were to interview that dream individual in the dream, that dream individual will also say that what that dream individual is seeing is continuous and permanent. It is only that waker who wakes up says that the dream world is not continuous and permanent. But then even otherwise, let us leave that aside. Even otherwise, all these things that you see in the world, are they really continuous and permanent? Because you see all these things coming and going. This world itself, this world becomes manifest and then goes back to unmanifest. So because of the ignorance of the snake, because of the ignorance of the rope, you superimposed the snake upon the rope and took the snake to be real. Because you are ignorant of that waker who is asleep, you superimposed the dream world upon that waker and took the dream world to be real. Here too, because you are ignorant of the super waker, you have superimposed this world upon that super waker and you are saying this is real, this is continuous, this is existent, etc. So only upon that knowledge of that super waker, only upon that knowledge of that real nature of Ishvara, will you really be convinced that this world is also not real? But just as one has to wake up from the dream in order to know the dream world is not real, similarly, one has to wake up from this ignorance also, the ignorance of the super wake. Until then, you will continue to argue the way you are arguing. Adi Shankaracharya was once asked the essence of Vedanta. And this person said that there are so many Vedantic texts. So can you please give me the essence of Vedanta in one shloka? So Bhagavad said that I don't need a full shloka to give you the essence. I'll give it to you in half a shloka. And this is the third shloka that I have given in the PDF. There, Bhagavad says, Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya Jivo Brahmaiva Naparaha Anena Vedyam Satshastram Iti Vedanta Dindimaha. So that second half of the shloka is really talking about what the first half of the shloka is saying. And the first half of the shloka is the essence of Vedanta. Brahma Satyam Jagat Mithya Jivo Brahmaiva na paraha. Na para. Anena Vedyam Sashastram Iti Vedanta Dindimaha. Shankara says this is the drumbeat of Vedanta. Iti Vedanta Dindimaha. That Vedanta should be understood in this manner. Anena Vedyam. This is how it should be understood, the entire Vedanta. Anena Vedyam Sashastram. How should it be understood? That Brahman is the Satyam. That Brahman is Satyam. The Sat that we talked about. Trikala Abaditam Yat Tat Sat. That whose existence can never be negated in the three periods of time. That is Brahman and Brahman alone. Then what is this world? It's Jagat Mithya. So we have to understand these two terms, Satyam and Mithya, in order to grasp the essence of what Vedanta is trying to tell us. So for this, let us take the example of a bangle, a golden bangle. Let's imagine that I'm holding a golden bangle in my hand. Now, let's say you are saying that this bangle exists. We say the bangle exists. But let us say I am saying this is gold that exists. This is gold. You're saying this is a bangle. The bangle exists. What I say is gold exists. Now there are two statements about the same thing. One is bangle exists. The other statement is gold exists. Now are both of these statements equally right? Or is one statement more right than the other? So if I were to say bangle exists, and then someone else says that uses a synonymous word like uh, kankana or a kada or whatever. Right? So these are synonymous words. They would be equally right. It's just the meaning of the word has changed in a certain language. That's all. The language has changed. But here, these are not synonymous words. So both are equally right and not the right answer. One is more right than the other. And let us see why that is the case. Because in this bangle, the substance is really gold. What is substantial is really gold. The weight belongs to the gold. When I touch it, I'm really touching the gold. And when I give it to a jeweler, let us say, the jeweler takes the weight of the gold. Now, before this bangle came into existence, the gold was there. After this bangle comes into existence, it doesn't displace the gold. The gold doesn't go anywhere else. The gold remains as gold. The existence of the gold is not negated. If the gold were to disappear, then people will be afraid of making ornaments. Nobody will make ornaments. The reason people confidently make ornaments is because they know that the gold will remain intact. And subsequently, somebody says that I don't like this bangle anymore, I want to make a necklace out of it. They melt the bangle. Gold still remains. And then the necklace is created. Instead of the bangle, there is a necklace. The gold still remains. So you see, the bangle comes and goes. The necklace comes and goes, but the gold still remains. The gold is the more enduring reality. So what really exists is the gold. The bangle is a name that is given to a form of the gold. The bangle is just a name given to a form of the gold. What really exists is the gold. And therefore, in this statement, bangle exists versus gold exists. One is more accurate. One is a more correct description. To say that it is gold that exists is more right. To say it's a bangle is not incorrect. But to say it is gold is more right. Because that statement cannot be negated in the past, in the present, or in the future. That this is a bangle gets negated in the past before the bangle exists and will get negated in the future after the bangle gets converted into the necklace. But that this is a gold, that statement, those words, one will never have to eat. One will never have to take it back. And therefore, Vedanta points out that the bangle and the gold do not have an equal status in terms of existence. The bangle appears to exist. It borrows existence from the gold. It is a gold that really exists. It lends existence to the bangle. And therefore, this bangle and the gold are really two different orders of reality. Orders of reality. This is a very important idea that Vedanta introduces. It says it is necessary to have two different words in order to identify the order of reality. One word is not enough. It is you are losing this information if you say bangle exists and gold exists. If you say this, you are losing this important information that bangle appears to exist, whereas it is the gold that really exists. And therefore, gold can be said to be Sat. In the world of gold ornaments, gold is the Sat. But then where are we? What word do we use for the bangle? This is where Adi Shankaracharya points out Jagat Mithya. This is where the introduction of the Mithya word becomes necessary. Without the Mithya word, we cannot communicate the reality of this world. So, Krishna, you have a question?
Yes, in fact, a couple of questions. Sorry, that's why I had to put my hand up. I didn't wait for the class to get over. And considering this subject, can we have a longer question and answer today? Because
Um,
several questions, and even until where we have reached right now, I have
yes.
multiple questions. So, if
Okay,
possible,
okay. We'll try to see if we can break at a convenient point. Let us see how this proceeds and what would be a good point to break. Or
sure,
if I can complete whatever I had to say, then I'll try to do that. If not, I'll see if I can pause it sooner.
super. Thank you.
Okay. So now, what is our orientation in the language, right? We always call this bangle a golden bangle or a gold bangle, a gold necklace. So here, if we look at the language, the bangle becomes the noun and the gold becomes the adjective. The necklace becomes the noun, the gold becomes the adjective. So, what is really the Sat? What is really existent? We are making it an adjective. And what is really appearing to exist, we are making it the noun in our language. And because we have got so used to the language, we think of the existence as an attribute of the object. Whereas what really exists should be the noun, really. Because a noun is the name, place, animal, or thing, they say. What is the real thing? That should be the noun. What is the real thing? Here is the gold. But we don't make gold the noun. We make this bangle the noun. And we make the gold the adjective. So if we were to reorient our language, that would give a lot of clarity. Because it is ideal to call this bangly gold, necklacey gold, chainy gold, earringy gold, right? If we were to say that, then that immediately brings this clarity that what exists is the gold, and these are all just forms of the gold. Now we'll come to this world at this point, and we are saying that this world exists. This world exists. But then, what is it that really exists? What is the Satyam in this world? That's an important question. And the scientists, to some extent, they are trying to probe matter to figure out what is it that really exists. The scientists have been probing matter for a while, and we have studied what science says that matter is really made up of molecules. So when they say something is really made up of molecules, right? Then if we were to apply this definition of Sat to what what science says, then science, perhaps before the discovery of molecules, would have said that this bangle exists. But after the discovery of molecules, they will say that it is the molecules that exist in the shape of the bangle. Even science will agree with this. But then probing matter doesn't end there. They break up the molecules also into atoms. Then the molecules are no longer the Satyam, the atoms become the Satyam. And then you can say that it is really a bunch of atoms that really exist in the shape of the bangle. The bangle is a name and a form given to a certain set of atoms that come together. But then they break it up further. They say that these atoms are now made up of electrons, protons, and neutrons. So here, what is really here, if you ask the scientists, they say electrons, protons, and neutrons in the shape of a bangle. But then they break it up further. And they now have come up with some 30 or 40 subatomic particles. This is ongoing research. They keep adding to this. And when you come to quantum physics, what it is saying is that this particle, even it is not really a particle. I can't tell whether it's a wave of a particle, because if it was a particle, it should be constrained to a point, but now it's appearing in all kinds of places at the same time. So what really is there is something like a wave, he says. I cannot really describe it to you physically. I need mathematics for it. So the scientist has been probing and probing. They still don't know what exists. Because this research will continue. Vedanta says that this research will continue forever. Because what the scientist is probing into is probing into Maya. And there is no end to probing into Maya, because Maya is this mysterious entity that is not really classifiable. We'll look at this later. But he is really probing into Maya. Vedanta says that he can never arrive at the reality that Vedanta is talking about. Because it is Brahman alone, Vedanta says, that really exists. And this Brahman is this imperishable, all-pervading, formless, attributeless reality. And because it is attributeless, it is beyond the range of science. Because science is all about pratyaksha and anumana, perception and inference. We have seen this before. So this reality is beyond the range of science. Can be only known through the Shabda Pramana of Vedanta. Vedanta says that the Brahman alone is the Satyam, the most fundamental reality that exists is Brahman. And how are you so sure that this Brahman cannot be negated? The existence of Brahman cannot be negated, that's what you're saying. How are you so sure about it, if you ask? And it says, Vedanta says, because Brahman is the only entity that is independently existent. Only an entity which is dependently existent, its existence can be negated when you know its substratum. The existence of the snake was negated because it was dependent on the rope. When you knew the rope, you know the snake doesn't exist. The existence of the dream world got negated because it was dependent on the waker. When you know the waker, you know the dream world doesn't exist. The existence of the entire world is dependent on Brahman. The existence of Brahman doesn't depend on anything else. Therefore, the existence of Brahman can never ever be negated. So we talk about the table's existence, the chair's existence, the wall's existence. So here too, we are talking about table, chair, wall, etc. being nouns. And existence, we are taking it to be a property of the object. We are taking it as qualifying the object. But this existence is really the Brahman. Therefore, it would be more appropriate to call this Wali Brahman, Cherry Brahman, or Tably Brahman. Because the world is pervaded by Brahman. Brahman is what really exists. Everything else is just a name and form of Brahman. Therefore, Brahma Satyam Brahma Satyam. It is impossible to negate the existence of Brahman. Brahman was there before this world came into existence. That is this consciousness, Ishvara, that we are talking about. Brahman alone was there. After that, the world came into existence. And then subsequently, even after this world goes, Brahman alone will be there. So even now, what is really there is Brahman. Just as when I look at a bangle, what is really there is the gold. Whereas the Jagat is Mithya. The Jagat is purely names and forms. It doesn't really have any existence of its own. The bangle is purely a name given to the form of gold. Similarly, everything in the world is just names given to forms of Brahman. So why is this word mithya required? Because this world is not asat. What is asat? Absolutely non-existent. This world is not like this son of a barren woman. The son of the barren woman can never be experienced, but the world is experienced. So it cannot be asat. But the world cannot be called Sat either because the negation of Sat is impossible. The existence of Sat can never be dismissed. But the existence of the world is dismissed on knowing Brahman. Therefore, it cannot be Sat. And these are the two sets of texts that I had sent in the PDF. Sat Chet na badhyeta, it says. If the world was Sat, it would never be dismissible. Sat Chet na badhyeta. If the world was Sat, then its existence should never be dismissible, but its existence is dismissed upon knowing Brahman. Asat Chet na pratiyeta. If it was Asat, it would never be experienced. And therefore, we need this additional word, which is mithya. Sad asadbhyam vilakshanaha mithya. We need this additional word in order to describe the status of reality of the world. So, this mithya is a category between asat and sat. In general, the world has no concept of this. We say either things are non-existent or things are existent, and this is the cause of samsara as we see it. This is intimately related to samsara. The world is only names and forms. This world is not the jiva's projection like the dream is the jiva's projection. We can accommodate that. This world is projected by Ishvara. Ishvara's projection. But it is only names and forms. That is the only way that one Ishvara can appear like many. One cannot really become many. One has to appear like many. And this is called Vyavaharika Sat. The projection of the snake or the dream was an individual's projection. But this being Ishvara's projection, not being Jiva's projection, it is called Vyavaharika Satyam. So really speaking, we talked about four categories. Asat, which is absolutely non-existent, and Sat, is absolutely existent. And in between, we talked about two categories, which are Pratibhasika Sat, meaning something that appears to be existing. Swakale Satyavat Bhati, it appears to be existent in a state of ignorance that is like the snake projected on a rope, which is the Jiva's projection. But then this is Vyavaharika Sat, Satyam, this world, which is Ishvara's projection, which also appears to be existent in a state of ignorance, but upon knowledge, it is seen as not really existent. So Sat, Asat, which is absolutely non-existent, and then Pratibhasika Satyam, which appears to be existent but is a projection of the Jiva's mind, Vyavaharika Satyam, which appears to be existent but it is a projection of Ishvara, and then Sat, which is absolutely existent, which is Brahman. So we collapse these middle two into a category known as Mithya. Only names and forms. So we can say there are three orders of reality then. Asat, absolutely non-existent. And then Mithya, which appears to be existent. And then Sat, which is absolutely existent. So if you take anything in the world, it is Mithya. If you take a shirt, for example, the shirt is a name given to a form of fabric. The same fabric can become like a coat, for example. The same fabric can become a tie. So the shirt is a name given to a form of fabric. But then if we investigate what is fabric, the fabric is a name given to forms of yarn. If you examine what is yarn, it is a name given to forms of fiber, cotton fiber. If you examine what is fiber, it is really cotton. If you examine what is cotton, you'll really find according to science, you will find all these particles and you can keep going. But that, as Vedanta says, that will never end. What Vedanta says is finally, it's all a name and form of Brahman. So when we negate the reality of the shirt, saying it's only a name and form, what really exists is Brahman, we are not negating the experienceability, transactability, and utility. The world can continue to be experienceable, transactable, and also useful, but it doesn't have to be real. This is the point that Vedanta is making. So, there are a few corollaries here which I will defer to the next class, hopefully, or we'll get another opportunity to talk about. There are certain very important things that we need to know about Mithya. We'll get to it in subsequent classes. But one of the most important things to know is that Mithya can never ever affect Satyam. If the bangle gets damaged, gold can never be affected. So we started off with saying that whatever I'm experiencing is the reality. But now we are ending the class saying that whatever we are experiencing is not the reality. But at the same time, we are saying it is not non-existent. That is why this intermediate category of Mithyatvam becomes important. This, what we are experiencing, is not the reality because it's not really existent, but it is also not non-existent. So what we are experiencing are all names and forms, which are Mithya. Then, how do I know this reality? How do I know this reality? This is where Vedanta gives the most mind-boggling answer, that you are that reality. You are that reality. Jivo Brahmaiva na paraha. That this Jiva who is asking the question, how do I know the reality is the reality? So this is what the teaching has to really show me. And once one knows this, then one becomes liberated. Why? Because Mithya can never ever affect the Satyam. With this, I'll end today's class. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha. Hari Om.